Or do you worry about the French elections, or do you worry more about a misstep from the ECB, that they talk about tapering too soon?
I think it's too early for the ECB to talk about tapering. I think that the ECB is, at the moment, in my view, pretty much in autopilot mode. They are going to deliver QE at a relatively steady pace, and our baseline is that they will start the tapering at the beginning of next year, with the announcement that is going to come towards the end of the year. French election is a risk. We estimate the probability of Le Pen winning at about 15%. What really matters, though, in the medium term for the Eurozone is not only what is going to be the outcome of the presidential election, but also what is the outcome of the parliamentary election. Having said that, in the case of Le Pen presidency, I'm pretty sure that you're going to have pretty large stress in financial markets.
But should the ECB model and prepare for a possible breakup of the Eurozone this year?
I think that the ECB will never put a plan in place for that dynamic. I think that the way in which the ECB is going to act under the scenario of a Le Pen presidency is basically going to use some of the current measure and basically saying this is a shock to the financial market that has some impact in terms of our medium-term inflation forecast. Therefore, we need to use some of the policy tool that basically means, in my view, at least an increase of QE from 60 back to 80, and maybe some other measure in terms of liquidity provision to the bank. On the other side, what they could also put in place is a sort of anti-contagion mechanism for the other country in the environment where they perceive that they are the only defender there.
Right. What would that look like?
Well, that to me is something similar to the Home Team program, so something that is a sort of target purchases for to avoid a disaster there.
Fabio, as we go to the elections in the Netherlands and then France, do you believe that the spread between the German and the French yield will continue to widen quite significantly? Are we going to see it two weeks before the French election spike up?
I think that there is a risk of further widening. We have been in widening, and we took some chips off the table because I believe that now the balance of risk are probably symmetric, and given the fact that position is pretty crowded. But going into the event, I have a feeling that given the fact that it's a large risk and people need to hedge, I think that you may see a lightening of a long position in the OAT, and that is basically going to put some widening pressure.
Is there a risk that the markets take the wrong bet like last time? I'm thinking of Brexit, I'm thinking of Donald Trump. Or are they doing different polls?
Well, I think that if I look at the polls in Trump and the Brexit, they were not massively wrong.
Yeah.
And when I look at the poll at the moment, I think that they are indicating that in a second round against Macron, Macron is polling about 60 to 62%. I think that we are at a decent margin, even considering a potential error there. Clearly, if we go through the vote of the first round and you see a narrowing in that poll, I think that market will become increasingly worried. And if we have a, let's say, 55-45, I think that market will be scared in that scenario.
Will Mario Draghi get the support he's been asking for years, which is what Donald Trump is getting, which is basically structural spending, fiscal spending, tax reformation? Are politicians in Europe going to wake up to that?
I think it's going to be very difficult. I think that the silver lining there is a possibility of having Macron there, maybe Schulz being part of a coalition in Germany, and maybe, Renzi government is probably going to have a sort of bias towards more fiscal union as a medium-term project. We saw the white paper on the medium-term project for Europe. I think is the only way in which fiscal integration, in my view, can take place if they start from something that is perceived as a common project, like the migrant crisis. So you could use the migrant issue as a way, if you wanted to fund Europe together in the medium term.
Fabio, I know we talk a lot about France and the fact that Marine Le Pen could become president, but is Italy actually the weakest country right now in the Eurozone and the most dangerous one? I
think it's the most dangerous, in my view, in the medium term. To me, it's more as a sort of a slow-burning issue. I don't see an immediate problem. I don't see election coming, before year end. I believe that the election is going to take place in the first quarter next year. And at the moment, if you look at the polls, you basically have the polls of what could be a grand coalition, pretty much at the same level as the poll of Five Star, Northern League and Brothers of Italy, which are the parties that are anti-Euro. Hopefully we are going to have a year where the reform process is going to help the growth dynamic in the meantime, and then the big risk is the election next year. our baseline still remains that you're going to have a grand coalition in 2018.
Fabio, what are you expecting from the Fed next week? Is it 100% almost a given that actually they hike? What does it mean for euro dollar?
I think it's a done deal. I think it's already priced in terms of the currency.
Okay, so what's your level on euro dollar by the summer and then end of the year?
We have the level at year end at 115. I think that the main driver in our view in terms of the effects is the fact that the ECB will be tapering. And with the risk of Trump beginning a trade war, normally we see a decent bid in the reserve currency. So the exit strategy of the ECB combined with the risk of Trump, in our view, is going to be supporting the euro going into year end.
Do you see a bubble anywhere in the markets? I'm thinking of German yields or something that you believe is mispriced. German
yields are rich and probably are going to reprice after the French election and with a tapering taking place in Europe. It's not my asset, but I'm a bit worried about the dynamic in equity. I think that there are a lot of positive news that are priced in, but I'm not really sure it's a bubble.